Hey there, and welcome to the State of Innovation podcast, where we discuss digital transformation, strategy, stories, and the mindset behind it. I'm your hype guy, Luke Bohaneke. In today's inaugural episode, our host, Misha Hannon, from yours truly, Deep Dive Technology, is joined by David Post, Managing Director for IBM Blockchain. Misha and David met a couple of years back over a New York City dinner and have been blockchain buddies ever since. Can they finish each other's sentences? Probably, but in any event, Misha could not have thought of a better first guest and guinea pig than his pal David. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into such topics as the benefits of blockchain, who needs it, and what's slowing down adoption, where the concept of business development and network building comes into play in the world of technology from two guys who believe in strategic partnerships more than anybody, the future of smart cities from a digital transformation perspective, and the biggest challenges and opportunities facing the large enterprise today. Whether you're watching or listening, enjoy today's episode. Visit stateofinnovation.show for future episodes and join the conversation on LinkedIn.
David, welcome to this session. I'm really glad that you accepted the invitation. And to be honest, it's a first session that we record, and I couldn't think about anyone else better than you to be on this first episode. Okay.
Well, I hope I meet expectations. You're setting big expectations for me, so I hope I can meet them.
No, and actually, you know what? I really want to do this as a real conversation, open conversation, and it's not any selling conversation. I know that you're passionate about what you do and how you do it, okay? And I also really passionate. Like I love to do what I do, okay? And I even remember our first meeting in New York. That really first time we saw each other, and suddenly I felt like an amazing click, okay?
Yeah, I agree.
And like when I started to plan all this, I said to myself, like, okay, David is going to be the first person that I will talk to. Okay.
Thank you.
And here we are. And I would really want to ask you to introduce yourself, like in a really first few short sentences. Okay.
Sure.
To let people know, like, why are you here and why we're having this conversation.
Exactly. Great. Yeah. So David Post, I kind of wear two hats within the IBM's blockchain group. The first is the managing director for IBM Blockchain Ventures. So that's kind of the network incubation arm for the blockchain group. And then what I've increasingly been spending a lot of my time on is the first network that we've incubated. So it's called Trust Your Supplier. It's basically a blockchain network focused on supplier onboarding and validation. We have around 30 Fortune 500 companies signed up already. Been working on this for roughly 2 years now. Time flies when you're having fun, and have been thinking a lot about blockchain networks, how to convene them. That's the special sauce here. Everyone focuses on the technology, on the speed, on the security, but the special sauce here is how you convene these networks, and our ability to convene blockchain networks is going to really determine, I think, on how fast and efficiently Internet Web 3.0 is going to come to pass. Because I think you have to get these business processes integrated and automated in order to really recognize and realize the potential of a Web 3.0.
Awesome, glad. I'm glad that you actually mentioned all that, because I do believe that one of the biggest challenges that we are facing right now, and I don't want to even use the buzzwords like as a digital transformation, it's actually the adoption of the new technology. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think people have focused on the technology at the expense of the overall business benefits and outcomes. So if you look at the way I describe blockchain technology, versus other stuff in the market. Something like AI, for example, is AI is a relatively immature technology with pretty well-defined use cases. I would say blockchain is a relatively mature technology with relatively undefined use cases. And I think that it's been interesting to me to see all of the hype and interest has gone into, the crypto space to these layer one protocols. And by and large, people have gone to market with blockchain software as a point-to-point offering. That's not really, in my opinion, where the special sauce happens here. The value of blockchain is its ability to harmonize intercompany business processes, kind of like how ERP did within enterprises. And that's challenging work, but that's where the real synergies are, and that's where the potential for automation happens. Everybody, when they focus on blockchain, they talk about security, they talk about auditability. Yes, that's the case. But I think as important is down the road is the ability to automate business processes. And the only way you can really do that is if you have a agreement among stakeholders in an ecosystem about how that business process should be standardized. So I think that's what has slowed adoption as the focus has been in, I think, the wrong areas if you're trying to get widespread adoption, especially within the enterprise space. And until people kind of come around to what this is and what this isn't, I think it'll continue to, it's moving fast, but it's not going to scale as quickly as it would otherwise.
So what's your opinion? What should we do right now to at least increase a little bit the adoption? Okay, like.
Yeah, so I think it's coming up with strong use cases that provide time to value. I think it's so I think there's a value proposition here. I think it's helping people understand what this technology is really well suited for versus what it's maybe not. It's understanding that the ecosystem is what really is most important here, and you can have a blockchain-based application that create value, but that's going to be pennies compared to the value you can generate if you are able to convene a network around a business problem. So I think it's I would say in the enterprise space, it's kind of showing the potential. The best way to do it is to show that networks are successful. So it's showing the potential of a network-based approach to solving business challenges. I think if you're to meld the crypto and the enterprise worlds, it's understanding the extent to which there is a layer one protocol out there and how that relates, the relationship between layer one protocols to enterprise use cases. I think that's relatively undefined. I think that it'll increase uptake if you can meld the crypto and the enterprise world. And I think it's just also understanding which entities in the ecosystem are best positioned to convene these networks, and also which ones are best positioned to kind of help get them off the ground and participate in them. So my view after working on Trust Your Supplier is that large companies can do blockchain networks. Certainly IBM has done them as of other large organizations, but I think that there's an advantage to pairing, this is what we've done with Trust Your Supplier, pairing the speed and agility of a startup with the brand and distribution of a large organization, because you can simply move faster and in more agile way if you have that construct, while also getting the benefits of bringing a lot of clients to the network. So that's what I would say. Those are the three things on top of mind that probably would help. I think that if you look at the research, a lot of enterprise buyers are still very interested in doing blockchain projects. So I'd say maybe there was a little bit of a dip, but I don't think that's sustained. I think people can see the potential over time, but it's just really coming to an understanding. If you're going to do it internally, here's what the value proposition is. It's engaging with your ecosystem associated with your company. If you want to improve the process of doing business with other companies, you got to find a network to join and pick this where you think you can create the most value.
So technically, if we will talk about technical piece for a second, and I would love to get back to the business side of this use case, but from the technical perspective, you do see that blockchain is actually the platform or framework that allows to integrate multiple businesses and multiple companies. Is it true?
Correct. Yeah, I think it's the permissioning aspect. So it's being able to have individual exchanges of information in the context of a business network and in a safe and secure fashion. I think that kind of part two of that is the benefit of having a common ledger and being able to automate business processes. So, I do a lot of focus right now on Trust Your Supplier in the compliance space. So oftentimes companies will do their own compliance checks, and that's kind of very repetitive because they're basically looking for the same information. I use the analogy as if you're in the United States and every time you cross the state line, you have to get a new driver's license. They're basically asking for the same, the same information personally, the same qualifications, but we're treating it like it's something that's happening anew. So I think that the difference here is that if you have an identity source, so trust your supplier is all about an identity for suppliers that's credible, it's on the blockchain, you can permission your information of yours as a supplier. If you can establish that underlying identity, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can automate things on top of it. So using zero knowledge proofs, you could say, okay, I trust these other 10 companies. If they've done a validation using a validator that I approve of for compliance purposes, I don't need to know who did it. I just need to know that it's been done. And the blockchain network can give me a high level of security, or that in my
And the trust.
assumption that this actually has occurred. So the business, as I said, we've kind of, I think, lost the business process automation aspect of this, and that's what everybody dreams about when they talk about Web 3.0 is the business process
Yeah,
automation, and the only way you can do that is if you have people playing in a common sandbox around standardized business processes.
I see. I see. And from Derek, from your observation, from your experience, what do you see? Did you feel that executives' behavior has changed toward the blockchain adoption, or they
Yeah, I
still
think
kind of in the fear?
no, I think that everyone is. I think people are interested. I think as I said, if you look at all the surveys done by IBM, by our competitors, I mean, there's still. I think people are still understanding that there's a lot of value in doing this. So I think interest continues to increase. I think that, of course, in order for that interest to be maintained, people need to see that business value is being created. And a lot of this, I think, when you look at, especially with networks, which is what as you can tell, I'm probably, I'm focused on thinking about as opposed to specific blockchain applications, is that they take time to develop, and they might require organizations who are launching them to do business in very different types of ways. So there's a paradigm shift happening. And I think it's incumbent on those who are within the industry who are providing those services or the thought leadership around networks to really help clients identify the areas of opportunities where they can really derive the most value. Because of course, as with anything, if people don't see the value, they're not going to continue to proceed. So
Exactly.
I think that there's interest, but it's that the challenge is that, and I've seen this firsthand in our networks, is that large organizations are complex, and it's difficult to get everybody on the same page around getting aligned around a common way of interacting with a various business process. So that's the challenging thing here is how do you use the power of large organizations to set standards. And I think that whoever can effectively solve that issue around one use case in a given issue area, well, then they have the opportunity to do it in a variety of other contexts. But that's the hard part, is getting the flywheel going, because I work for a large, complex organization. Imagine
Yeah.
trying to work for 15 of them at the same time, each with its own unique set of priorities, unique set of politics. So you have to get everybody to get a successful network going, basically rowing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's not a lot of experience out there with consortium-based business-to-business marketplaces. People have launched B2B marketplaces. If you look at the B2B marketplace sector, Alibaba is the one that comes to mind. There's not a lot of other ones that have reached a substantial amount of scale, especially around business process redesign. So that's the challenge and the opportunity. And I think that if clients and vendors alike come in with the assumption and the context that that's the problem that you have to solve for at an organizational level, that will obviously improve the speed to which you can begin to improve things at the business process level.
And by the way, I'm pretty sure that you already started to face, I hope you guys started to face a situation where multiple companies already did some POC or even deployment of their own blockchain. And now
Right.
they're like multiple companies with multiple blockchains thinking about, okay, now what? How are we going to integrate now? How are we going to
Yeah, of course.
exchange data? So what's your takeaway on that? Like, how do you think it should be addressed in this case?
Well, I think there's always the inclination to try to go it alone, right? You have your internal budget allocated. It's much easier to demonstrate a return to your boss if you're just doing your own POC. Say it's less complex than having to deal with other companies and having to negotiate with them, and not do everything that your legal wants to do. Have to negotiate with your legal.
Yeah.
So but at the same juncture, I mean, there are limitations in terms of what you can do if you're just using this for internal purposes. I think that we have seen companies successfully implement blockchain internal pilots. We've done it with an IBM and seen with other clients where you can generate value. If you're talking about transformation, though, it's really exchanging value between parties where you need trust, where you need security, where you need auditability, and that kind of requires a different delivery mechanism. And it, we've seen consortiums emerge. They have different types of formats. I have my feelings on what consortia have a higher likelihood of success versus others, so we can talk about that if you want to. But I think it's
sure.
it's understanding the opportunities and limitations associated with trying to establish something that's going to create value for your ecosystem, and
For
whether
ecosystem.
it's possible to do that internally or whether you have to collaborate with even competitors to achieve those objectives.
I see. Oh, it's really interesting because we started to see this on our angle as well. Okay, but I was really curious to hear this from you, like if IBM already sees this. Okay, because like if you ask me, I think IBM won the game of the blockchain adoption by big enterprises. So everybody, like I hear this a lot. Like it's probably just few blockchains that I can list as enterprise ready, and for sure IBM it's probably number one. Okay, so and I hear this when I talk personally to executives, different enterprises around the globe, and I really glad to hear the same from you. Like so, it's really interesting approach. And I also do see that companies already getting to the points like, okay, how we going to integrate with another blockchains down the road? So
Exactly.
going to be really interesting scenarios where we will talk. I have another question. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the interesting point on that is that, if companies are thinking about making that financial investment, is it right to start off the bat trying to do that in a more with a couple of other companies? So it'd be, I think your experience kind of tracks with what we're seeing, is that clients can get a lot of value out of these internal POCs, but would there be more collective value via synergies if you start out with an ecosystem-based approach at the outset? And I think in many cases, the answer might be yes. It might add a little bit of additional complexity, but I think that as we know, blockchain is a team sport here, so it requires getting the ecosystem involved.
It's like internet, right? Well, we can be in our local network and have some benefits being local, or we can connect to the entire
Correct.
world and start exchanging information, data, and start benefiting from there. Okay.
Correct.
So the question that I have right now, so who needs the blockchain the most right now? What is your opinion?
That's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think that there's opportunities in various sectors. So I think that if you look at what ERP did, and I know you've got a lot of experience with ERP from the early days in terms of doing the implementations, is that it really created a lot of efficiencies by getting everybody on the same page. That's what drove the synergies, is having one common view of how you're going to plan resources for an enterprise. So there aren't that by and large hasn't translated to the standardization of business processes between companies. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the lack of business process standardization is what drives challenges. So if you're looking at the energy sector with load balancing on the grids, there's just not one way of doing that, or there's not one way of if people reduce their energy usage to basically compensate them with some type of store of value. If you look at the media sector, there's not really that efficient of a way of being able to track whether advertisements are being tracked, being delivered fraudulently, or people are just clicking over and over again, because there's not a standard for how we track and measure that and then exchange value between people within the ecosystem. So I don't think that there are industries that don't have that problem, quite simply because not a lot of effort has been put into both standardizing and automating the way that business processes unfold between companies. So I think that's the opportunity here. I wouldn't say that there's one industry needs it more than others. Of course, there might be more value created in one industry versus another from a monetary standpoint. But
Well,
I think that
much more visible, right?
Exactly. The problem statement still evolves. I mean, I think that the supplier onboarding and validation space that I've learned about is a very interesting area. I mean, shared KYC, the challenge there is, once again, how do you get large financial institutions to standardize around one process for doing KYC?
Yeah.
So there's opportunities all over the place, but once again, it gets back to the question, can you convene a network and an ecosystem with the players and the amount of transaction volume required to begin to standardize? That's really, I think, the problem the industry has to solve for. Internal POCs, of course, are going to continue to generate value, but I think that where this gets very interesting from a business perspective, both from folks owning the networks and from folks participating in them, is you can get to some level of scale where you establish that baseline level of information, whether that's on the identity of an advertisement, the identity of a shipping container, the identity of a carton of mangoes, to begin then to automate additional adjacent business processes. That's where the special sauce is. And then, of course, over time, the panacea, everybody's dream, is having these things interoperable with one another. We're definitely a ways away from that. But I think that in terms of getting the enterprise networks up and running, I think that's going to continue to evolve. But as in any industry, you have to learn what works and what doesn't. And this is a relatively new model, I think, for how you generate value for enterprises.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I kind of prepared some questions for you, and you somehow answered some of them. So my other question that I had, and you partially answered it, like what should they do about getting to those positions to start consuming and absorbing the benefits of the blockchain?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So first, identify the places where it makes sense to start and scan the market to determine what's out there that you can participate in. So it's much easier to join a network than to try to build one. So it's basically looking across the landscape and saying, yeah, exactly, much cheaper, much easier. So looking across the landscape, saying where can we participate, what can we join in that will allow us to prove, both internally and I guess externally, that this is a viable approach to solving issues within an ecosystem. So I say that's number one. I'd say number two, I mean, there's certainly the ability to benefit from internal blockchain projects. So I would say that if you think about different components of an organization, or especially a large multinational, these are by and large kind of sometimes run as different businesses. So there's an opportunity to build kind of these mini networks within companies as well, and automate processes that are not standardized maybe between different business units or between different groups in ways that maybe the existing ERP systems can't. So I think that's another very interesting area, is trying to identify either cost takeout opportunities or revenue generation opportunities via internal projects. But you got to be realistic, I think, if you're buying this and you're going to advocate to your boss about what you can and what you can't achieve, and that has to be very focused on performance metrics.
On performance metrics. And just out of curiosity, do you already see some use cases where enterprises started to integrate or interconnect their current ERP systems, SAP systems with the blockchain? And if yes, would you point at what exact activities they do, and how others can benefit from that?
So basically, you have to connect into an ERP system in order to generate, I think, most value in most of these cases, because it needs to be seamless integration with how you manage your business. So if you look at Trust Your Supplier, the identity information can be integrated into existing procurement system. You can use different third-party validators. I think so. That's basically, once again, if you want to do Web 3.0, especially in the enterprise space, it basically has to go from ERP to blockchain network. There has to be some type of data standardization layer or data exchange, back to another blockchain network on the other side, and back to an ERP system. So, in order to get embedded with the way that businesses operate, you have to be connected to the systems that underpin those operations.
I see. Okay, no, makes sense. Another question that I have for you, David, I know that you were, I hope I can call this, a professional traveler. and you had some travel addiction. If I'm not mistaken, you traveled around 70 countries. Is it true?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I am addicted.
So I hope the world will change again, and we'll be able to travel again same way we traveled before. So my question about this, like, how has this helped you? Your experience seeing the world, seeing different companies, organizations. How did it help you to with what you do right now? If
I think.
it really helped.
Oh, absolutely, it helped me in a ton of different ways. I think that my biggest takeaway is that no matter where you go, whether you're dealing with high-powered government officials or executives in New York City, or whether you're taking a taxi in rural Sierra Leone, people are basically the same. I think that was my biggest takeaway. We are where we are because of where we were born, which is basically one of the most random things in anyone's life. Where you're born, you can't choose that. But everyone basically wants the same thing. They want to have a good life, time with their family. In terms of, I've met folks driving taxi cabs in Uganda who have 2 master's degrees. So it's just that we're all roughly the same level of intelligence. We have roughly the same needs, and if you have that perspective, I think it just improves your level of comfort and working with new people and being comfortable with them more immediately. And that's what drives positive interactions in your personal life or in your business life is being able to relate to people and being comfortable with them. So I'm a learned extrovert. I learned that through traveling and through being exposed to lots of different types of people and lots of different scenarios. And I think if you travel, you just realize it gives you faith in humanity because you see that most people are basically good.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. And I also know that you really, really, really passionate about anything related to the smart cities.
Yeah.
So what is your view about technology in the smart cities? And of course, like if you can say a few words about what the blockchain influence will be on the smart cities in the future. And let's talk about smart city, about how you see it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Yeah, so I think that my first big career break was definitely joining the management team for IBM Smarter Cities Initiative. It was a great experience, super inspiring to travel around and talk with city leaders and national leaders. I remember one particular instance where I was talking with a gentleman who managed one of the water utilities for estates in India, and he was talking about how the procurement process, took so long, was basically undermining their ability to generate, deliver clean water to citizens throughout the state. And not really think about that. Something that small can have big implications. So I think that the smarter city space hasn't probably evolved as much as I would have liked over the past couple of years. I think that it's a lot of the same issues, and I think a lot of the same questions. And it's really been focused on kind of optimizing front end systems like the transportation system or the water system, all the sexy stuff, right? All the stuff people want to talk about. But
tangible, right?
Yeah, it's all the tangible stuff, but it's. I think that in terms of budget planning and resource allocation, I think that's what's most exciting to me, and I can talk a little bit about how I think that blockchain might play a role in this, because if you look at cities where I used to live, New York City, it's not really a unitary actor. It's made up of all these various city agencies that deliver services to citizens. I don't get services through New York City. I get services through the Department of Education or the Department, the Department of Sanitation. Whatever it might be. But as you've looked at COVID and you've looked at all the discussions that have gone on around how the stimulus money should be spent, where it should go, I still come back to the common theme that you really don't know from a social perspective or from an economic perspective where we should allocate our money to generate the highest returns when it comes to generating outcomes for people who live in cities. And I think that's what the promise is here, is if you can get an integrated approach to resource planning and allocation across different issue areas, we really don't know where we're going to get the highest social return on investments. And for someone who is a recovering hippie or an ex-hippie, whatever you want to call it, that's really important to me. And that's why I continue to be very interested within the city space. I think that in terms of kind of these mini blockchain networks that we're talking about, I think that there's the opportunity to standardize business processes between agencies, right? So there's pieces of information that need to be exchanged within agencies that can't for different regulatory purposes or legal purposes. And there's also, stores of value that if you had a better way of tracking them, if you had a better way of automating things, could get us to that vision or of having a more integrated approach to resource planning. So, the future of the planet's gonna unfold in cities. So there's still a lot of work to be done to determine how we can more effectively manage resources and ultimately generate outcomes for people.
Really interesting, really interesting. And so you also believe that blockchain actually going to play one of the main roles in the smart cities, especially from the angle of helping with processes and automations.
It could. I think that there's certainly the opportunity to do so. I think that obviously in anything smarter cities, it's probably the politics that are going to determine ultimately how this unfolds. Because if you're making resource allocation decisions based upon more evidence, there's probably going to be people who are not so satisfied with how the resources are allocated, because it'll probably change the resource allocation in ways that might be detrimental to other people. So I don't know. Blockchain could play a role. I think that the blockchain use cases in the public sector are still kind of developing, I would say. I mean, there's been some good work that's happened. I don't know if you saw recently, China's got, I don't know if they said hundreds of blockchain projects going on with different various aspects of the government. I think the key determining factor here will be whether they can be whole of government approaches or whether they're isolated within one particular agency or organization. Obviously, as you can see, I'm biased towards this kind of more of a whole government approach. It's more of a network. I'm pretty predictable when it comes to this type of stuff. So I think the jury's out, but I think the potential is definitely there.
I see. Awesome. David, I'm not going to really grill you on that. I have actually two more questions with your permission. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
That I do think that people who will watch and see this podcast in the future will actually enjoy to hear the thoughts of people like you. Okay, because you really represent one of the smartest people on earth, and I really believe in that. So
thank you.
The question number one.
Can you tell my wife that?
Ask her to subscribe to the to the channel down the road. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first question that I have, really simple. From an innovation perspective, what do you see the biggest challenge in the enterprise today?
So in terms of blockchain, or just generally speaking?
Generally speaking, where I would say technology can help, not necessarily blockchain.
Yeah, I would say that I'll look at it from a business angle. I think it's just kind of understanding ecosystem-based approach to getting things done within a business. I think that some companies have done this really well in the tech space, is learning how to leverage ecosystems in support of growth and different business objectives. I'm not sure if I have anything tangible to say about what the specifics look like, but my inclination is that this ecosystem approach is going to become, more and more important over time, just because there's a lot of synergies to be gained by effectively trying to generate non-traditional partnerships or find new ways of going to market via the ecosystem. So I think it has to do with that, with getting beyond your four walls as an organization and figuring out how you can match your organizational capabilities with that of organizations that are within your orbit.
Nice. Yeah, totally makes sense. And another question, and I promise it's going to be the last question.
Oh, no, I'm happy. I always like talking with you, so no problem.
And quite similar, but again, from an innovation perspective, what do you see the greatest opportunity in the enterprises today? Like how technology can change those opportunities or adjust those opportunities. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have an aha point of view on that. I think that as we see all companies are technology companies now, I think that that's just going to be more pronounced as things progress, because companies continue to digitally transform. So I wouldn't say I would point out one thing in particular, but if you're not a technology company now, you probably should. because I think every organization has been infused by that, and it's a major source of competitive advantage. So I don't have any. I don't think I have anything super bright to say on this topic, except that I think we can expect that the digital transformation that's going on will continue to unfold.
I actually strong believer that when we're talking about digital transformation, it's not just about doing some upgrades from technology perspective. I'm really firm believer that when we declare we need to do digital transformation, for me it means we need to become digital. So it's technically, it really doesn't matter what kind of business we are in. We need to become digital business. This is how I see it. And when I really looking in the history of many companies like Kodak, I just published about this
interesting.
years ago. Companies that failed to become digital, they're actually dead or dying right now. So
I agree.
Me?
So yep, I agree with you completely. You have to be a technology company, and as you said, you have to bring together technology, people, and process. I mean, that's what creates the value. And this trend's not going anywhere. This one's going to keep on moving forward, and either adapt or don't adapt. And if you don't adapt, then you probably won't be around very long.
Yeah. So David, another question, really simple, kind of to summarize our conversation. By the way, I really loved your view and what you were saying about this and the processes. And I didn't see a lot of people talking about blockchain and processes in the same topic. Okay. But the really simple question that if people who will watch this podcast would like to contact you, what the best way to be in touch with you? Because I also know that you're a huge fan of developing partnerships.
Oh, definitely.
And, so what the best way to be in touch with you?
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can figure out a time to connect. So always happy to talk with folks like you who enjoy the space and are doing good thinking on the topic. And this is something I really love. So always enjoy the opportunity to talk with folks who want to have good conversations in this area.
Thanks for tuning in for our very first episode at the State of Innovation. If you have feedback for us, including topics, guests, or anything else under the sun, send us an email at info@stateofinnovation.show. Check out our website, stateofinnovation.show. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or a handful of other platforms we plan to be on. And of course, check us out on LinkedIn, where the daily conversation is bound to happen. The new digital era has certainly begun, and we hope that the State of Innovation can take your enterprise confidently there.